All right, guys, this is Jared Dodd with my son Isaiah, and we are bringing a book list to you. We had a request to do a book list, and one of the previous lessons in the 15 Essentials, we talked about the importance of being well-read. Reading is very important, so we thought we would throw together a book list. Turned out to be a lot more difficult than we thought. And if you hear that noise in the background, that's our baby Genesis making noise. So we tried to keep the book list at 75. We ended up with 76. We just could not let one go. But the purpose of this book list is just to show you what a good book list entails. When you look at this book list, it's going to be down in the description. It shows you, of course, that you begin with the Bible. That's number one. There's kind of an order to this. After the Bible, we have Aesop's Fables. And then we have a category in the list called living books. What is a living book? For instance, this is a book about William Bradford. It teaches your children about William Bradford. And yet it's not a history book where it's just a set of facts. It's a story. It's his story, so it's kind of like historical fiction, and yet it's alive, it's living, there's action, there's a story, and within that story you learn. One of the best ways to learn. Here's another one by Gene Fritz also. Can You Make Them Behave, King George? So it's a fun story, and your children is learning history. So living books are very important. Something else you'll see as you look at this list is that it has biographies. It has documents in it. For instance, let's see, we have the Mayflower Compact on a book list. And many people wouldn't think about having the Mayflower Compact on a book list, but it's an important piece of our legacy as Americans that we need to read. It has the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, things like that. Speeches. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech is on this list. We also have biographies and autobiographies. For instance, I mentioned William Bradford. One of the autobiographies I want my children to read is Plymouth Plantation, which is his story of the experience of the Mayflower and the people on board. All right, so like I said at the beginning, this was a very difficult list to put together. And the reason is because we kept putting more and more books on this list. We couldn't stop at 75. And many of us have favorite authors that have written scores of books. So what we did is we cheated and we came up with an author's list. So if you look down in the description, not only will you see our 75 or 76 books, but you'll see an author's list because my sons, one of their favorite authors is G.A. Henty, who, for instance, wrote this book In Freedom's Cause. Amazing historical fiction. This is the story of William Wallace and Robert the Bruce. So they said, hey, 75, well, let's make 70 of them G.A. Henty. That wouldn't work. C.S. Lewis is a favorite author of ours. We also put on, if you look at that author's list, we put on theology. A.W. Tozer, Charles Spurgeon, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So it's also good not only to have book list, to say, okay, these are the books that we want to read as a family, that we want our children to be familiar with, but we also have authors list as well. Now, something else that I want to point out when it comes to books, and it comes to book lists, and it comes to reading books, a really important question is concerning abridged and unabridged versions. For instance, we have many classical books, and some of them we have the complete book, and some of them we have the abridged copy. For instance, let's see, I have here, this is Swiss Family Robinson, the whole thing. We are reading this as a family. Every day we try to read a chapter together as a family with Dad reading. I'll ask questions after we read. It's a great practice. And here is the abridged version. Now, I still have this version, but I'm thinking about getting rid of it or tucking it back in a corner because I really want my children to read the whole thing. Whereas the role that abridged versions can come into is, for instance, when it comes to Gulliver's Travels, I want them to be familiar with this work. It's not really imperative to me that they read the actual authentic version. So I'm okay with them reading a quick, fun read of this just to get the background of the story. Something else when it comes to abridged books, for instance, this is Ivanhoe, another book that I think I'm going to tuck this in a corner because we have the full version. I want my kids to read the full version because I'm a big fan of Scottish history. But we've heard, I don't know if it's true, but we've heard that if your children struggle with dyslexia, that these really come in handy to help your children improve their reading and where they get to enjoy these stories without having to read the full version. All right, guys, so once again, I want to encourage you to take a look at this book list and use it as a template to come up with your own family book list. Unplug the television at times, turn it off. Maybe you want to just put it away and just give your kids good books that will inspire them to be the men and women that God is calling them to be. And do not underestimate your children. My son Isaiah is 11, almost 12. When he was 10 or 9 or 10, he read the book Les Miserables, which is on this list. It's 500,000 words. I couldn't have done that when I was his age, but he was able to because by the grace of God, all glory to God, from a young age, he had a love for reading. Was that a fun book?
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorites.
What'd you do?
The Count of Monte Cristo.
The Count of Monte Cristo was another book that I haven't read, but he read. My son Jared read it, and they said it was good. Any other? Give us a few more recommendations for books.
Jane Austen series.
Jane Austen series. He's been going through them. Pride and Prejudice. You read Sense and Sensibility. Emma and Persuasion. I haven't read any of those books. Okay, one more. Book or series. Hardy Boys?
G.A. Henty's really good.
G.A. Henty's good.
Hardy Boys.
How many Hardy Boys books have you read, do you think?
I have no idea.
50?
Maybe more.
Maybe more, yeah. He's got a big stack. So, guys, reading is fun. Reading is awesome. It's good for your brain. It's good for your heart. If you have any comments, if there's anything you would tweak on this list, put it down in the comments below. And let's keep, by the grace of God, raising up children who will make a difference in the generation to come. Thank you so much.